before the break, we were discussing what influences children to make purchasing decisions and the role that the dynamics within families play. Now let's turn our attention to how marketers should respond. Still with us, Andrea Croissant, Sue Comber and Louis Siecho. I would really like to go back to the family dynamics though, and Andrea, maybe we can point it to you to say, let's look at this at different scenarios. Let's look at, for example, single mothers, and how does that influence, you know, purchasing decisions within the family. Let's take that as a start. What are your comments on that?
Well, in terms of single parent families, children often have much more of a say and are slightly more independent, because obviously the single parent sometimes relies on that particular child because they don't have a partner in the household. You also get an example of dual income families where obviously both parents are working, so there's slightly more money, and often the parents are very torn in terms of spending quality time with their children because they're out at work quite a lot. And then obviously you have something like the guilt factor where parents often try and spend as much time with their children, and then obviously try and give as much money as possible to almost feel like they're doing as good a job as possible.
But all this differs definitely in a township home. A single mom will not compensate just because she doesn't have finances.
They don't lose their control and power because they're not home as often as that. When she leaves in the morning to work, she will draw a list of what needs to buy if the child has got to buy it. And I said as early as, if you go to the spaza shop and buy what was not given as an instruction,
you go back
you are
and get
told
it
to
again.
return it.
Right.
So I mean that's
So
very
if you
clear.
come with Aquafresh instead of Colgate, you back to the sponsor.
You're back.
Right.
You know,
So Sue, are they getting the target right? When they do the branding and making sure that the kids are aware of what's out there, do you think the brands out there are aware of all these dynamics and they're working towards it?
I think yes, they are. I think the difficulty here is confusion. When you're marketing to children, I think the confusion is whether they are aware of the marketing and whether they're responding to the marketing or whether they're actually buying the product. We mustn't confuse the three
but aren't
issues.
kids always aware of what's out there? Because friends would talk about it.
I think they
Right.
are influenced hugely, and Andrea would back. Well, that's exactly what Andrea said. They are hugely influenced by their peers. It's just a hard. It's difficult because there is such a dichotomy in this country.
Yes.
It's not a
In terms
shotgun
of-
approach,
no,
right?
No,
Now let's
you
take it to the rest of
can't. No, you
Africa.
can't.
How different is that, Andrea?
From an African perspective, the youth are a couple of years behind South African youth, if you want to call it that. But they're very aspirational as they're starting to get more global influence, media influence, and obviously the biggest influence is technology, especially cell phones. As they start penetrating the continent, we've done research in Nigeria and Kenya and some of the other African countries. That is very much becoming the enabler in terms of youth having access to things like internet or Facebook, or being aware and being able to communicate with youth outside of their borders and not almost growing up within that small microcosm, which is their particular village.
So kids in Nigeria, do they have purchasing power?
They don't have as much purchasing power as children in South Africa do, not yet. We see it obviously in a city like Lagos, where they are slightly more affluent than the rest of Nigeria. Yes, they're starting to get there, but they're still a couple of years behind South African kids, if you want to call it.
The Nigerians are also known for being very brand conscious. Do
Very
you
much
see
so.
that
Oh,
that
yes.
translates to the children as well?
Yeah, very much so. We did research a couple of years ago. It wasn't as big. And as I say, as they're getting more exposure to TV, international programs, there's obviously a huge black market in terms of brands in Nigeria.
Yeah.
So they are very aware
who
of the
exactly
brands.
is making those decisions? Are the parents saying, this is the brand you wear, or are the kids deciding that they want a Louis Vuitton or whatever?
The kids are aware of it. Again, very similar to what Louis was saying earlier. If the parents are forking out the cash, they obviously might have control of the purse strings and say, sorry, you can't have it. But as I say, the kids are very much aware and they're very much aspiring, even if they necessarily don't actually own the brands themselves.
Yeah.
Louis, you've got some stats for us on what kids are spending. Please share that with us.
According to research done by students, which is an organization in Joburg, the 8 to 22 year spending estimate is at 95 billion. 18 to 24, that is your student market, is sitting at 28.5 billion.
And what are
So
they
that's quite
spending
huge.
money on? What are they spending?
Well,
this
first on the list they
astronomical
say about on average 655 is spent on food, groceries and eating out. The next category would be rent, because the students they need to pay rent, and 320 rand on average is spent on clothing and footwear. Airtime, as a lot of people might want to
Yeah,
know,
big one.
is actually 6 on the list at 152 rand per month.
So they're actually paying for their own airtime.
Yeah, and they say also, boys spend more than girls, and by
That's the age you
15%.
impress.
Really?
Perhaps it's that little money
Oh, what
that
happened
goes
to
to the girlfriend.
Sheconomics?
Now, as we were discussing, we're realizing there's a gap within the township children. What exactly do you think marketers out there should be doing to target those kids?
Well, I think big companies that are doing well in that space actually go to schools. I mean, Colgate as a brand was built at schools where children are taught how to brush their teeth. Now, in that way, you're creating a relationship with the brand and the person that might go home and say, Mommy, I know that this particular toothpaste brushes teeth better than that one.
Those are necessities, but
Yeah.
what about luxuries?
Well, I know that, as mentioned earlier, there are teenagers who would know of the big brands, but they know they can't afford them. That's why your, Hong Kong market is growing
So
in
it's huge,
downtown
really.
Joburg,
Yeah.
Because they want the label, they can't afford it, they
aspiration
go
is there,
elsewhere
yeah.
to buy
Affordability.
similar but not exactly the same. I'm sure you know of some TV personality who was found wearing some label, very expensive, but it was not the real one.
And what about the peer pressure in terms of
Peer
teenager?
peer
Does that
pressure
play a role?
is huge. In fact, I always say young people, when they walk out of their homes, it's not what they feel about what they are wearing, it's how their friends are going to respond.
Yeah.
That they're
And
straddling-
music videos are playing a huge role. What they see 50 Cent to be wearing, that's why our jeans are getting lower and lower, because those are the images they see 50 Cent, show on TV, and they want to be that.
And we're
But
actually going to discuss that in our next show with MTV. to
yeah,
see the
if your
influences
peers say this is the one, you're looking great, you're looking the part, when you go to
Then
a
that's what
party
you do.
and girls your age tell you you're looking fine, that's what
So
you
word
do.
of mouth marketing
Plays a huge role.
yeah.
Yeah. More so in that market. Sorry more so in that market. I don't think you can actually use, the normal way of advertising and
powerful
marketing.
is that?
Word of mouth
Wow.
is very, very
Yeah.
powerful. Find them in their space, educate them, let them go and speak about your brand.
Talking about marketing as well, what are the challenges when communicating to children?
That is a huge one, and it's a very interesting thing for me. When you market to kids, Andrea was talking about children aspiring to be older than they actually are. And there's a very, very sad statistic in this country, an exceptionally sad statistic in this country, and that is that the children's reading and comprehension age is actually 2 years below par. So if you're targeting or marketing a product to a 10-year-old, you're actually talking to the comprehension level of an 8-year-old. So yes, the kids are sophisticated, and yes, they are using cell phones, and yes, they are streetwise, and they have all the savvy, but they have the comprehension of
Right.
children who are younger than them. And I think a lot of marketers perhaps don't take that into cognizance. They don't actually pitch at that level. They might be, I'm not saying they all do it, but I think there are instances where they pitch at a particular level expecting a response, but they should maybe be cranking it down a notch because the comprehension level. I mean, just to give you a silly example, we have an SMS line for all our competitions, and we have what we call a catchment file, which catches all the boo-boos. It's like a boo-boo bin. So when they SMS, they can't spell the response. So say, for example, they've got to spell Bantex or whatever. There are so many of them that spell incorrectly that
But
I
isn't
think...
that SMS language?
No,
Like
no.
lol
That's the trigger that they actually have to, but they spell it incorrectly. They can't. That the comprehension level is almost so diminished.
So
which
what should
means-
marketers do?
Well, marketers, I think, must just keep everything as simple.
Simple.
If you're talking to children,
Simple, yeah.
yes, key is simplicity.
And also the triggers. Also, what makes them tick? Andrea, what makes them tick? Is that's the first question, isn't it, for marketers to know?
Simplicity.
Absolutely,
hey,
I'd say
Andrea.
keep it simple. I think
Short.
authenticity, make them laugh, and one key message. Marketing 101. I mean, don't give them too many messages.
Yeah.
Just tell them one thing.
If you to excite kids, a lot of advertisers, particularly when they're marketing to children, to excite them, do something interactive and have a competition element.
Now, this is all going with the assumption that we must market to kids and not to the parents.
But you must market to children.
Yeah.
I think we've all established that they are critical and that they are hugely
Yeah,
important.
but that would completely be different in a township home again.
Yeah, well, I don't think children consume advertising as much as their parents do.
Sure,
That's why
I
find them at the
agree.
movies, find them
Do
through
you agree?
MTV, Channel O, because that's what they're watching. They switch off when an ad comes in. I mean, they don't really sit there and say, I like it.
Yeah.
You know? So I think find them where they are in their own spaces and speak in their language.
Okay.
They have a language, by the way, that's
So
not
you're
common
still
to all of
marketing
us.
to kids in township
know,
areas then?
Well, you need to
To
go
parents,
and find
yeah,
them
okay.
where they are. If you want kids, tell parents how good this product
Right.
is for children, and the mothers will go and buy it.
All right. Louis, Sue, Andrea, thank you very much for joining us.